Hi, this is your host Opal Bhartia and welcome to Tier Let's Talk. And today we have with us our vice CEO and co-founder of Permit.io. Or it's great to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is my pleasure to have you here. Let's start with some of the basics, which is since you are also co-founder of the company. What specific problem did you see in the space that you wanted to solve that you created the company?
Both my co founder and I come from a developer background. And for other careers, we found that we constantly have been building access control solutions for our products, always from scratch, and more often, more than once. So, for example, at my previous company, Rookout, I ended up rebuilding access control 5 times. And I said, that's probably 4 times, if not 5 times, too much. And that pain point of constantly having to build access control was just annoying, and we wanted to get that off the table. Just like you don't build authentication from zero, just like you don't build databases or billing from scratch, there's no reason why you have to build permissions or access control. So that's what we bring out of the box so people can focus on building their own products.
Well, let's just stick to permissions. How difficult it is to build permissions, especially in the cloud native world.
So it used to be somewhat easier when we were working on monoliths. So you had one core spot where you would integrate your access control, and a lot of frameworks like Django and Spring Framework would come with something ready-made that you can use. But as we moved to microservices, now we found ourselves having a bit of access control in every little microservice. On average, every microservice does 3 authorization queries or permission queries per request that it's handling. So that already made the problem a lot bigger, a lot more spread out. And in addition, the complexity of the applications themselves, the products that we're building, are constantly requiring more capabilities. So everyone starts with just let's have an admin and not admin. We, the developers, would be admins and everyone else won't be. But then you quickly find that you need role-based access control, and then role-based with ownership, and then attribute-based access control. And then you also need audit logs, and you need impersonation, and you need invites, and you need approval flows, and you need more and more and more. Constant demands are coming from our developers, from security, product, compliance, all over the board. And every time, it often requires you to go back to square one and rebuild your solution. And combining that with the growth of the tech stack itself, with microservices, just creates a huge pain point. And a lot of times, maybe the most difficult part is people are not aware of this. You initially think, oh, this is going to be easy. And then half a year later, you discover how much effort you have actually put in and that you're still not done.
When we talk about permission, it is very closely related to, of course, IAM or, identity access management. Can you talk about, especially from Permit.io's perspective, how it's related? And you also talked about, the previous companies that, you're involved with. So let's understand that relationship as well.
Permissions or authorization is part of the bigger space of IAM, Identity Access Management. IAM is what I like to describe as a waterfall. It starts with identity management, so solutions like Okta and Azure Active Directory. They are responsible for just managing for the organization which identities they have and what kind of attributes or information we have about them. So, for example, we can say we have Danny, and he's part of the marketing department, and he works Friday to Sunday, only the afternoons, and for some reason he has a very good, comfy position, and he's working from California. So that would be something that would be managed by the identity management. Down the road, when we start to connect to products, that's where the next tier in the IAM stack comes in, and that's authentication with solutions like Auth0 and AWS's Cognito and OneLogin and a bunch of others, especially a bunch of new others around the passwordless space. And either way, authentication solutions are responsible to check against the identity management and to verify that the person connecting or the entity connecting is who they say they are. And once they're verified, that goes into the product itself, into the application. And then that's where permissions and authorization comes in. Once we know who they are, we need to decide what they're allowed to do. So, for example, you'll have a bouncer in the beginning at the entrance to a building, but once they're in the building, which rooms are they allowed to go to? Which companies are they allowed to interact with? So that would be the difference between authentication and authorization, which a lot of times people confuse mostly because they sound the same. And up till now, when we're using IAM solutions, they would mostly give you identity management and authentication. The authentication part will include claims, things like this user has an organizational role, they belong to the marketing department, something that the application can use to make decisions on what they can do. But those decisions were left to the developers themselves. They were left to proprietary code for each application. And that leaves a lot of room for a lot of work to do and also a lot of mistakes. Because just like authentication, there's a lot of cryptography and security challenges that require a lot of in-depth experience to do. So that's where we kind of come in. So once you've adopted your authentication solution and you work with your customers' identity management, you want to manage everything in your product or products. And you want this to be seamless. You want this to be powerful enough so you can define all the policies that you want. And it should work seamlessly with the entire stack that you already have in place. And that's what we provide for developers and for the other stakeholders with low-code, no-code interfaces.
Can you also talk about the challenges that might be there, whether you talk about authentication or authorization, in the multi-cloud world, where sometimes IAMs are tied to a particular cloud provider? You can have AWS as its own, Azure or GCPs. How do you deal with that? How challenging is it? How do you deal with that problem?
So luckily for us, it's actually the reverse, because we understood that the space is mature enough and that part is specifically not a problem, we were able to recognize the opportunity here and start Permit.io as a company. What really enables this is standards that have come into maturity. And the main one is JSON Web Tokens. So basically, every authentication provider today can provide you a standardized way to interact with it without requiring a proprietary protocol. Every authentication provider can create a cryptographically signed certificate in the form of a JSON Web Token and pass it along to the product or the authorization layer. And we can latch onto that seamlessly. You can just pass it directly to us as part of our APIs. And then we don't really need to care what's up the stack from us. Which authentication solution is it? How it connected to the identity management solution? That's basically transparent. And also it enables us to work with whatever stack each customer chooses. And it can also be multiple solutions per customer. And it's thanks to those standards that we can take this forward. And we're also excited about creating more standards down the stack. Now that we're building authorization in an organized way as a unified product with unified interfaces, we're eager to create standards that the rest of the ecosystem can connect to as well.
You did touch upon that earlier. This is an opportunity for you to talk about, why someone should use Permit instead of, when I say Permit, the name is interesting, Permit.io, instead of building permissions themselves.
Well, the main reason is it will take you a lot longer and will require a lot of skill sets that you often won't have. That's kind of the main premise. But I think the main thing is that it's really not something you want to do. When you talk to developers, they often don't care about access control. It's kind of a requirement that they have to tackle, that a lot of stakeholders are requiring from them, but it's not at the focus of their actual product. It's almost exactly the same across every product. So you see user management with roles, and you see API key management and secret management and audit logs and impersonation and approval flows. These are not unique to any product, and yet you end up building them. And when you build them, you're not even excited about that. So the main reason here is just to be able to focus on what you actually care about, or what you're passionate about, and the core values of your product. So instead of building something that you probably already built somewhere else and something that other companies have built a billion times, focus on the important stuff. That's, I think, the most important part of it. And also on the way, automatically adopt best practices, avoid vulnerabilities, uh, build it in a way that is future proof, and don't fall into annoying pitfalls.
Now, I want to talk about open source angle as well. You are a founder of Opal Project. Talk about that project and also how is Permit leveraging it.
As developers ourselves, we're really excited about open source. We really think that's the way to kind of build a conversation and create those standards that I've mentioned before. And so we started, first of all, adopting existing open source project. We started with OPA, Open Policy Agent, which is a general purpose decision engine. And we found OPA to be a great engine, but it was kind of really geared towards working in Kubernetes and infrastructure level authorization. We wanted to take it to application level permissions. So we needed a way to sync it with the changing tides and data stacks of the application itself. I'll give an example for what I mean. Let's say you want a policy like, a very simple policy like, only users that have paid for a feature can use it. That bit of information, who paid for the feature, no longer resides in your app's database. It now resides in a third-party service like Stripe or PayPal. And you want, when someone swipes your credit card, you want them to gain access immediately. So we need a way to constantly keep the authorization there in sync in what's happening in the application and all of its dependencies. And that's where Opal comes in. Opal creates a live, real-time pub/sub channel that updates Open Policy Agent on the fly. So when an event comes in from wherever you want, from Stripe, Opal can listen to it and tell each of its clients to go and fetch that data. And that way be synchronized and consistent with the state. So when an actual authorization query comes in, they give the right answer. There's a lot more that Opal actually does and a lot of minute details in the implementation of how you do consistency and how you connect this to Kafka and other solutions like that, but that's kind of the core concept. And we built Opal because we had to. We wanted to build Permit.io, and Opal was one of the key building blocks that we had to build. And we decided that critical element should become a standard, and we should share it with the rest of the community. So the minute we've built it and we were happy with what we created, we took it open source. And we were really excited to see how much of love it got so early on. So it's still a young project. It's only half a year, 7 months old, but it's already been adopted and is in production in amazing companies like Tesla, Accenture, Zapier, and other awesome places. And this trend is only continuing. And once we had that maturity with Opal, we were also able to build Permit.io, which leverages both OPA and Opal in their kind of good infrastructure and adds on top both APIs and experiences for your internal stakeholders, product security compliance, but also your end customers. The idea with Permit.io is you get the end-to-end experience. Unless you want to build something, you don't have to build it. And when you want to build it, you can always go down to the open source building blocks. So you're never kind of locked into something that you can lose control for. Because we hate that concept as developers. So we wanted to bring it to our customers as well.
All right, thank you so much for taking time out today and talk about the company. Of course, good luck, best wishes for the success of the company. You have big plans there. But thanks for your time today, and I would love to have you back on the show because this is a topic we'll be talking about a lot in coming time. So thank you.
It was really great to talk with you. Really great questions, and I'd be happy to come again. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.